Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us here today. I'm Mark Kirby, and this is a webinar about how you can help protect your business from cyber attacks. Last slide, please, Jake. We're just going to wait a couple of moments just to make sure people start. Usually, most people join a couple of minutes late for these webinars, so don't want them to miss anything exciting. And that's probably long enough. So next slide, please. So yeah, thank you for joining us. My name is Mark Kirby. I'm one of the directors at Intersys, and I'm joined here today by my colleague Jake Ives, who's the head of security, and Jim Stevenson, who is the head of cyber and innovation at the Eastern Cyber Resilience Center. So who are we? I'm from an organization called Intersys. And Intersys is a security-first MSP. We've been around for almost 30 years, and we work a lot with Microsoft and do a lot of cybersecurity work. We have over 120 clients, and across the US and the globe. Sorry, the UK and the globe. And yeah, we specialize in helping organizations become resilient and actually operate a security operations center as well. So we respond to breaches and potential attacks as they happen. And I'm going to hand over to Jim, who's going to tell you a little bit about the ECRC.
Thank you very much, Mark, and thank you very much to the folks at Intersys for inviting us to be here with them today. My name is Jim Stevenson, folks. I'm a detective inspector with the Regional Cybercrime Prevention Unit. We cover all 6 counties in East Anglia and Kent, and we are a police organisation funded entirely by you, the UK taxpayer. Thank you very much. And we are here to provide the free government help to get people started on their cyber resilience journey. The cyber resilience centres were established between 2019 and 2022, depending on which ones they were. So there's a national network of us, 9 of us covering England and Wales. As usual, Scotland do their own thing. And yeah, we're just here to get you guys started on your journey and then signpost you into the hands of professional organisations such as Intersys.
Thank you very much. And so before we get on to the content, just a little bit of housekeeping. We do have a Q&A, which I will be doing my best to respond to people during the meeting. And if we've got some time at the end, I'll ask some questions over to Jake and Jim. But depending on how we go for time, because these things always tend to run over. Excellent. Next slide, please.
I'm Diane. I'm a finance manager at a care home and a victim of cybercrime. Where would you start? I walked in the office and said hello to Joe, made a cup of tea and sat down at my desk, as I do every morning, to quickly scan through my emails. Spam, newsletters, and an email from Sandra, my managing director, asking me to fill in an online form. So I click on it, which took me to a familiar looking portal. It asked me for my details, the usual stuff, email, name, phone number, create a password. And it was from Sandra, so I thought nothing of it. So that was that. Emails checked, time for work. The next day, I walked in the office, said hello to Joe, made a cup of tea and sat down at my desk. And wow, the inbox was alive. I had loads of emails from worried colleagues. And when I scrolled down to read the entire thread, I could see that I'd sent out an email, which read, "Hello, I'm really embarrassed to ask, but our bank balance is really low due to the cost of bills at the moment. Please could you send money here to help us out?" I never sent anything. And then the phone rang. Hello? It's the bank. Yeah. Thanks for calling. Yeah, something odd is happening. They said they'd seen some fraudulent activity on the bank account and they needed me to verify my credentials for them to shut it down. You know, we're not a big company, so I was grateful for the help and relieved to be able to sort out whatever the strange behaviour that was going on. I guess I got swept up in the moment and I wasn't thinking things through. I gave them the bank details, my username, the secret PIN. They told me to be careful of online scammers, as they've seen a lot of people clicking on dishonest links at the moment, so be sceptical. I told them about the form Sandra had sent me and asked if that might have started from that. They told me they'd sort everything out and not to worry. And so with that, relieved, I got on with my day. Crisis averted. Except it had only just begun. It was Sandra. Why have you removed thousands of pounds from the business's bank account? This is very serious. The police said I'd downloaded malicious software known as malware onto my computer. They said that Sandra's email wasn't sent from her at all, but instead an email account spoofed to look like hers. That's how they got onto my computer to send those emails out. And they'd called me on the phone number I'd given them when I was submitting that form. I just can't believe how quickly it all happened. The police keep saying, remember, you're a victim in all this. And workers saying, not to worry. But I just can't face everyone knowing what I've done. All that money that should be going to paying the staff, providing care for our patients, stolen because of me. It's beyond awful, and it could have been avoided. The police say this is happening all the time, but it doesn't make you feel any better. I know now I could have read the email more thoroughly before clicking the link. Checked if it really was from Sandra. I should have put the phone down when they claimed to be the bank and called the bank directly myself. But this sort of thing has never happened to me before. And I just didn't stop and think. But you can.
We can move on to the next slide. Okay, good afternoon, folks. Just to remind you, my name is Jim Stevenson. I'm the DI at the Cyber Resilience Centre for East Anglia. That video you've just shown, folks, is a real-life example. It was actually based on a care home cyber attack that occurred in Wales last year. That is an actress doing the voice and the playing the part of Diane, because poor old Diane is still so traumatised by the whole event. She's been unable to go back to work. Why have I shown you that? First of all, the key online demographic for online fraudsters and scammers, I'm afraid, is small and medium businesses. You hear all the time about big businesses like Marks and Spencer, or the Co-op, or the Royal Mail from a couple of years ago, or the Metropolitan Police from last year, the National Blood Transfusion Service, the British Library, to name some big national organisations. But thousands of small businesses get targeted every single day. But most of the time, folks, it isn't anything particularly sophisticated or technical. It's good old-fashioned fraud delivered to your inbox while you're at work, while you're at home. And fraud's nothing new. I'm afraid fraud is as old as money. Just the internet has allowed us to become victims of fraud anywhere, work, home, daytime, nighttime, whatever. According to the National Cyber Breaches Survey, last year, over 50% of businesses, the upper end of that prediction is about 58%, were victims of cybercrime in one form or another. In fact, last year, online fraud and cyber attacks made up over half of all the country's recorded crime. You heard that right, folks. If you took online fraud out of the crime stats, crime in this country would go down by over a half. Most of those attacks come from outside of the United Kingdom, many of those from hostile foreign states, places where the police there do not take phone calls from the British police. Many of those states, in fact, where the criminals operating there are pretty much given carte blanche by their state governments to target Western democracies like the UK, the USA, the rest of the European Union, Australia, New Zealand, Canada. And the most common form of attack was just phishing. That email that Diane received saying, "Hi, this is from Sandra, your boss. Please do the following." Spoofed to look like it's from her, a bit of business email compromise, to use the technical term. And last year, the average cost of a cyber breach for a small organisation was about £2,240. Everything from about £3 for a bit of courier fraud, where they send you a message saying, "Hi, we've tried to deliver a parcel and failed. Click here to pay to get it redelivered," all the way up to a ransomware attack. And we're going to talk about ransomware in a second when Jake shows the next slide. So ransomware attacks, folks, the upper end of that, that you're talking hundreds of £1,000s. The average cost of a ransomware attack in the UK last year was £313,000. This is a live feed, by the way, folks, from the website ransomware.live, that shows information about cyber attacks that are going on right now. 611 have been in the UK alone, but ransomware is the kind of makes up the top tier of cyber attacks. They're the really sophisticated ones, which is why the criminals make lots and lots of money out of them. You know, we're talking about technically proficient, serious, international, organized criminal enterprise. And some of these ransomware groups, folks, are enormous. They have hundreds of employees, thousands even. Some of the intel I received last year said that some of them have had to start hiring HR professionals. Many of them now run benefit schemes for their employees, like healthcare and pension funds. They are massive international business. If online fraud was a country in its own right, it would have the third largest GDP in the world, just after the USA and China. And the target market for these folks here in the UK are small and medium-sized businesses, anything that employs up to about 250 people, people who have got money in their bank account, but are possibly incredibly busy and might not necessarily have the technical expertise to realize what they're defending themselves against and the threats that they're operating under. And for most small businesses, 41% of them tell us that actually they're not sure a victim of data theft or ransomware they'd be able to recover anything. And about 1 in 4 of them said that they didn't think they'd ever be able to recover from a full-scale cyber attack. The initial fraud aside, this kind of criminal activity is putting small businesses out of business every day. But as we're going to say today, not all is lost. There are plenty of people here who know how to defend these things, and there's plenty of things that you can get from the police and the government to get you started on that journey. And to take us into a bit of the technical aspects of it, I'm now going to hand over to Jake.
Brilliant. Thank you, Jim. And thank you all for attending. So in these next set of slides, I'm just going to run you through some of the emerging threats I've seen in my in my experience over the last over the last year, just looking at different businesses we work with and the sorts of attacks they've been susceptible to. Cyber threats continue to evolve, and they're only evolving. Well, they're evolving very quickly, but they're getting smarter and they are getting more targeted. And even well-prepared organizations are facing new types of threats and types of attacks that are bypassing traditional defense mechanisms. So yeah, let's go on to let's have a look at the first emerging threat here, which is the rise in AI phishing, the AI-based phishing. So, we all, most of us here will know how, the common traits of a phishing email, right? The grammar's usually off. It don't always make the sense at the best of times. But cyber criminals are now turning to AI. They are harnessing the power of AI to do a lot of the open source intelligence work, i.e., finding out about the organization and the individuals that work there. And they are using AI to actually output rather effortlessly an email that makes reads well. And is very well targeted. So in this example on the right here, I've asked ChatGPT to give me some information about Intersys Ltd, and it has done that. And it's told us the sorts of employees, the number of employees that work there, who the directors are, and that it's a family, owned business. It's also given us common professional email formats as well. So it's suggesting here that the email format is first.lastname@intersys.co.uk. Great. So as a threat actor, I now have information at a glance about the organization, and I have, I'm equipped with the knowledge that will go on to let me send emails to, you at mass. But then we see just beneath here, I've targeted one particular individual in the business, and effectively ChatGPT's gone off. It's looked at that open source intelligence information. It's looked at LinkedIn profiles. It's looked at the company's house, and it's produced this email in under 30 seconds. So, imagine this at scale. Imagine sending, a threat actor sending this to thousands of recipients. It's a numbers game. Someone is going to fall for it, and it's more than ever. It's now more difficult to spot these. Another common attack strategy that we've seen quite a lot of recently, and in particular, it impacted M&S. A supply chain based attack. So in M&S's case, it was a consultant that worked for a third party organization that was breached, and onward from there they were able to pivot and obviously cause all of that disruption, which resulted to quite a disaster that I'm sure we're all impacted by. I, for example, I couldn't use my contactless card in M&S, and couldn't place orders online. So it was quite a devastating impact for M&S. But that originated from a supply chain based attack. So a supply chain based attack. So it's a strategy that whereby the threat actor will go for the weakest link in the supply chain, whether that be your catering company, whether that be the freelancer that works with you to produce graphics for your website. They'll go for the weakest link, and they will do so to get to you. Now, the difficulty here is that if you receive an email from someone at, say, your catering company, you've already established trust with that company. You already, you might, you've interacted with them in the past. You've sent emails back and forth. At first glance, depending on how convincing it sounds, you could fall for it, right? And the difficulty here is, unlike spoofed emails, where they typically fail mechanisms such as SPF and DKIM checks, the email would have actually originated from a compromised account belonging to your to a member of your supply chain. So as a result of that, it's very difficult to establish whether or not the email is legitimate or not. And this is where this is where it's actually very important to educate employees on how to spot these sorts of attacks, because they're not evident. And in recent days, I've seen a lot of businesses impacted by this sort of attack. Another common attack strategy is what's called a browser in the middle attack, also referred to as a man in the middle attack. It's a new attack strategy that tricks you into entering your, for example, Microsoft 365 login credentials on a fake page, right? But behind the scenes, the page actually isn't fake. It's the real page, but it's being delivered by the threat actor. The threat actor has complete visibility and and can capture the information that you're typing into the login page, and they can well, this type of attack strategy can actually surpass multi-factor authentication. So, you might receive an email with a link to a site, and you'll end up with a page that looks like the example at the top there on the right. It might present a captcha code or something along those lines. They all tend to look very similar. But you'll go ahead, you'll tick the captcha code, and you'll be led to a page that looks exactly like the Microsoft 365 sign-in page, only it is. But the telltale sign here is in the address bar. So you want to make sure that you're looking at the address bar at the top of the page to see if it does reflect the genuine login.microsoftonline.com address. If it doesn't, you have likely hit a man in the middle phishing page. Whatever you type in the box, your username, password, if you satisfy the MFA requirement, the information isn't going to be fed to the threat actor in plain text, but what they will get is a session token. They will be able to take over from where you left off, and as a result, they'll be able to do whatever they like on your account. So here's a few things to look out for. So you need to be suspicious of slight variations or unfamiliar domains. If in doubt, just browse directly to the service. So I've mentioned the URL for Microsoft 365 is login.microsoftonline.com. If you're in any doubt, just close your browser, reopen it, and browse directly to that website. If you have fallen victim to this sort of attack strategy, what you'll usually find is once you've signed in successfully, you'll hit an unusual redirect. You'll just be redirected to a news page or to Bing or to Google. Do be vigilant. If you spot that that's happened, contact your IT team as soon as possible so that they can take action. They can revoke your account session before it's abused by the attacker. Another common attack strategy. So we touched on AI a bit earlier. Deepfakes and impersonation. So what is a deepfake? A deepfake is it's an AI generated video. They are getting more and more difficult to spot. They're only getting more convincing because the technology is improving quite rapidly. And kind of extending on that, we're seeing AI also able to clone voices, and it can do so with just maybe a minute's worth of a voice clip. For example, now there could be someone sitting in this call, hopefully not, recording my voice and then using it against me later on. So AI can clone voices, and they can be used in turn to invoke calls to other businesses. Someone may decide to use my voice to phone the Intersys help desk and request for my password to be reset. Now, we have mechanisms in place to prevent this from happening, and we've educated our employees on what to look out for. But have you done that? And that's the important point to take from this. QR code phishing. So if you drive a car and you're parking it somewhere, nowadays everything is done using your phone. You're going to pay using Apple Pay or Google Pay, and to make that payment, you're likely going to be led to well, there'll be a kind of like a QR code displayed on a sign somewhere, and it will prompt you to download the Ringo app. But yeah, we've all got we've all got printers. We can, we could print our own QR codes, and we can stick them over the top of the QR code that was already there. And if we wanted, we could send we could send customers to any site that we wanted. And this is exactly what's happening in car parks across the UK. Threat actors are sticking over the QR codes with a malicious QR code that goes to a site that has a form to steal credit card information. Some of the ways in which you can you could kind of defend against this is just by placing your finger over the QR code. Does it feel like it's been stuck on? Also, if you do scan the QR code, look out for incorrect spelling. Take a look at the address bar. There's also some apps you can download that will allow you to see the URL ahead of the QR code that you can download. I've placed one here in the slide from a company called Trend Micro, a reputable security firm. You can download their app, and what that will do is it will tell you when you scan the QR code what URL lies ahead. If it's any URL other than the Ringo URL, then it's likely that you have reached a phishing page. These QR codes also originate in emails as well. So, and the reason that threat actors are including these QR codes in emails is because typically when an email is sent to you, you might have an email, an email defense mechanism in place, like your Microsoft Defender or your Mimecast. That's going to look for links, and it's going to look for grammar, and the common traits of a phishing email, right? But earlier on, and this is not quite the case now, because a lot of the vendors have had to obviously mitigate against this threat. So there's detection mechanisms in place to spot these QR codes. But if you go back maybe a year or so ago, these QR codes were able to bypass email scanning engines, because the email scanning engine wasn't able to decipher what's behind the QR code. So they were being delivered to employees across the globe. Employees were in turn scanning that QR code with their mobile device that belongs to them and not their organization, and doesn't have the same level of protection as their work computer. And then at that point, they're entering information to which the organization they work for has no visibility of. This is all happening now offline, from a device that isn't, that doesn't adhere to any sort of standard layer of protection. So what can you do as a business to protect yourselves? There's some basic steps. So one of the obvious ones is just using or promoting use of stronger passwords. Stronger the password, the better the protection you're going to get. So a password, and my mind works in very, very odd ways. I don't know why I've come up with this as an example, Aircon34, but Aircon34 could be cracked in just an hour. We've got another example here, Johnny 1994. So this password is inherently weak. Not only because it doesn't have any complexity or not much complexity, but it could be easily guessed if it's tied back to the user. So, this could, assuming Johnny is like the child of someone, and they're always being posted about on Facebook or on Instagram. The threat actor can gather that information and say, oh right, oh okay, this person's child is named Johnny. Let's try that as a password. And oh look, there's some information there because of this birthday post recently that suggests that they might have been born in 1994. Let's try Johnny 1994 exclamation mark. Then we've got the third example, which takes 5 trillion years to crack. I've deliberately spelt Mercedes wrong here because that actually helps. Directory, dictionary words, Mercedes might be in there. Mercedes spelt incorrectly is not, so that improves things. And also, this password is very easy to remember. I don't need to, going back some time ago, we were all told that we should set very, very complex passwords, ones that are very difficult to remember, right? Now we don't necessarily need to do that. We could use 3 or 4 words. I can remember that. And that's very secure. Never reuse the same password across multiple sites. So here's a scenario below here. We've got this man here in this picture. He says all of my passwords are the same because it's easy to remember. And we've got an example just below, their password for staples.com, dell.com, zero. It's all Coke02. That's their password. Then we've got an example here of this chap saying, "Who cares? It's only Contoso snacks. They stock our vending machine." And this is in response to a news article outlining that contososnacks.co.nz was compromised. Their database was hacked. Doesn't seem like a big deal, right? It's only stock the vending machine. But to a threat actor, they're going to see in the password data dump, oh well, Jake at domain.com. Assume domain.com is a big organization. He works at domain.com. What they're going to do is they're now going to test to see if that same password works to get into that person's company email account. Now, if you use the same password across the board, almost certainly it will be. And that's where MFA comes into play. And that's why it's so important not to use the same password across the board. Multi-factor authentication. Quite frankly, in this day and age, it's non-negotiable. You have to have it on all of your systems. It's also very important to document the systems that you use across your organization. So here's an example on my slide here. What I would recommend every organization does is create a list. It could be an Excel spreadsheet. Just create a list of every website that is used across the organization and just highlight if multi-factor authentication is enforced across the accounts that exist on that website. Also note who looks after the site. This will likely surface some very some interesting findings. Certainly in a big organization, you might ask around and you might identify that 100 different sites are used across the organization. And you'll be asking yourself the question, well, who looks after sendgrid.com, the site that's used to send our emails to clients and potential clients? And here in this example, I've got someone called Janice Loveday. And next to it, I've got a comment that says, didn't she leave the organization 2 years ago? You see, doing this sort of exercise could surface those sorts of questions, and then and then help you take action off the back of that. We've also got another entry here, phonesystem.net, and a description of that system. It's used to make phone calls, and we record all of our calls to the cloud, and we listen to them back using this site. There's a comment next to that. It says, why is an MFA enforced on here? We have recordings of our customers' phone calls and some very sensitive discussions. So knowing the services that you use, knowing that you have MFA on them and keeping track of that is very important. Do not store your passwords in a spreadsheet. And I know it sounds like such a silly thing to say, and most people won't do it, but it does happen, and I see it an awful lot. For obvious reasons, just don't store your passwords in a spreadsheet. There's no encryption. It's easy to copy, share, leak that document. There's no access controls usually, and there's no traceability. So consider this as an example. We've got an employer here who's saying, yes, our password to the platform we use to send emails to our customers is in a spreadsheet that's in the shared drive. And then there's this shared_passwords XLSX document. The employee then says, oh, this shared drive is so slow. It's always cutting out. You know what? I'm going to take a copy of this password spreadsheet and I'm going to stick it on a USB thumb drive so I always have access. And then consider this scenario. This employee's backpack is opened on the tube and the USB stick has suddenly disappeared. So in this case, the threat actor now has access to that whole entire spreadsheet containing passwords for everything the organization uses. And the employer has zero traceability of what's happened. The employer has no idea who has potentially seen that password spreadsheet or how it's been leaked. And it may be that the employee doesn't own up to it. So next slide here is just, educating your users. So humans remain the weakest link in cybersecurity. There is no denying that. And as we see that threats are getting more sophisticated, there is no better time than now to start educating your users. So there are many different platforms that you can use out there. One is called Know Before. There's several others as well. If you just type in cyber awareness training and phishing simulations on Google, you'll see a whole heap of them. But the idea of cyber awareness training is to send your employees 5-minute long videos that contain a set of questions that they answer once they've watched the video. And in turn, they are equipped with a better understanding of the common threats that exist. Phishing simulations they basically mimic a real phishing email, but what they're designed to do is to inform the organization's compliance team on who is clicking on the links, who could potentially benefit from additional cyber awareness training. When you're doing this, it's really important to support your team and never name and shame them. The last thing you want to do is send a report out to everyone to say this is who has clicked on these emails, and punish employees for it. Some of these are very, very complex in nature, and you should always support your team. Just assign them extra training or have a word with them one-to-one, but don't publicly out them. Reward diligence. So something that we do at Intersys, this is quite a good program that's worked quite well, is when an employee gets a phishing email that's fallen through the net, they send it to a centralized mailbox, ISO 27001 @ and they send it to team @ They include a screenshot of the email and the headers of the email, but they don't actually send, this is the important part, they don't actually send a copy of the email they've received. In doing so, they're rewarded with usually a £10 John Lewis voucher. It's small, but it's great. It promotes good practice in the organization. And coming to the end of my set of slides, but Cyber Essentials. So what is it? It's a UK government-backed certification, and it helps organizations defend against the most common cyber threats of today. It's a framework. It's a very good framework. Of course, it's not as in depth as your NIST or your CIS frameworks, but it is a brilliant, as the name suggests, essential framework to start with, and it will repel most of the common threats that exist in this day and age. So there's two types of certification you can go for, right? There is the Cyber Essentials Basic, which is a self-assessed certification, a set of questions you fill out, and then based on the answers you've provided, you're either rewarded the certification or you're not. And then once you've completed your basic certification, within 3 months you can opt for the plus certification, which is effectively the basic all over again, other than it's independently validated by an auditor, and it validates that the security controls that you've said you have in place are actually in place. But it's not all, not only is this really good at repelling a lot of the common threats that exist today, it's also great to display this logo on your website and in your marketing afterwards to demonstrate trust and show your customers and partners that you take cybersecurity seriously. There's other benefits as well. For example, it may help reduce cyber insurance premiums. It may speed up supply chain assessments conducted by partners and help you win business as a result. But one important thing to note about Cyber Essentials is achieving a certification isn't just about ticking boxes. So I have worked with organizations in the past that have they've gone and self-assessed against the Cyber Essentials Basics framework. And then I've looked at it afterwards and said, oh, hang on a minute, you don't have this in place, or you don't have that in place. That just wastes money and time for all parties involved. doing the Cyber Essentials as an opportunity to really bolster your security. It makes the world of difference. Do look at and if you're not technical, or if you don't have anyone technical in your organization, engage a reputable cyber security firm to perform a basic gap analysis of your IT estate against the Cyber Essentials framework. And the Eastern Cyber Resilience Center have a fantastic website that lists many of the partners that they work with that can help organizations achieve Cyber Essentials. You'll want to maintain the standards outlined by Cyber Essentials and review any of the recommendations that go on to be set out by it in the future, because it's a forever changing framework. It's forever adapting to the forever changing threat landscape. But yeah, don't blindly fill out the questionnaire and answer yes without any real evidence. It will, you won't like the results. And finally, dark web scanning. So, scanning for passwords on the dark web is a proactive security measure, and it helps businesses identify compromised credentials before they are exploited by threat actors. So there are a number of solutions out there. We have a solution of our own, and there's a QR code in the bottom right there that you can scan to find out more about that. But if you just type in on Google dark web scanning, there'll be a ton of vendors that pop up that you can use. And effectively the way that they work is you'll create an account, you'll pay for a service, and you'll provide some information about your business, the domain names you use for email, some IP addresses perhaps, some first and last names, however much you want to provide to it. And the service will will do surveillance on the dark web and look out for anything that may suggest that some of that information has appeared or is being sold on that illicit market that exists on the dark web. And with that, I'm sure you're all probably bored of hearing my voice now. I will hand back over to Jim for the next set of slides, which cover the many of the free tools that are provided by the Eastern Cyber Resilience Center that you can use to benefit your organization.
Jake, thank you very much. Wow, that was comprehensive. I learned loads, so well done. That was, folks, obviously all of that was pure gold. It really was. I think one of the key kind of takeaways from that was the individuals in your organization are unfortunately the weak link. Back before I joined the police, folks, when I worked in IT, I was used to refer to this phrase, whenever anything went wrong, was the error caused between the chair and the keyboard? i.e., is it a user error? 95% of cyber attacks are aimed at individuals. They're not aimed at our devices. And they're aimed, like any other social engineering technique, they're aimed at getting us to do harm to ourselves by giving away information that actually, if we were a little bit more on our guard, we would not share that information. But these criminals are very good at eliciting trust, at building rapport, and just encouraging us to follow our natural human instincts to be helpful. And that is, unfortunately, 99 to 95% of vectors now rely on some aspect of social engineering. If I could have the next slide, please, Jake, that'd be great. So if you're sat there going, well, where do I start? We have a limited budget, you might be thinking, or how am I going to explain this, or how do I justify to my board of directors, or to my boss, or to my board of trustees, how the legitimate cost we're going to spend on this. This website here, folks, haveibeenpwned.com. The Have I Been Pwned are an international non-profit run by a former information security officer from Microsoft. The guy's name is Troy Smith. I think he lives in Australia now. It's approved of by the National Cyber Security Centre here in the UK. That's the public-friendly face of GCHQ. And you can just go onto this website, you can put an email address into it, you can hit the pwned button, and it will tell you if your email address and any associated data with it has already appeared in a publicly available data breach. I've got a very old email address from back when I worked in IT, and it's appeared 9 times in various data breaches. And harking back to Jake's example about that reuse password thing, if the password that had been compromised in that data breach I was still using, or I had been using for things that were more sensitive, then that password is now out in the wild and can be tried by anyone against any username of mine they can tie to. And of course, these days, our username is usually our email address. So it's not exactly the extra layer of security we used to have when everyone's usernames are a bit strange. The NCSC also produces a free cyber action plan. It's a great way of setting yourself up as a Cyber Essentials readiness test. You can just simply go onto the NCSC's website or from our website, and we can signpost you to that cyber action plan. You can have a look at that. You can have a look at the Cyber Essentials readiness test, and you may find that actually you've done 90% of the things that you'd need to get yourself a Cyber Essentials certificate. So how can we help? We're the teal area there on the eastern side, folks. We are, like I said, we're police organised, government funded. We don't charge membership. We don't charge for any of the services we provide. But we are, the start of your cyber resilience journey. We are not the be all and end all. As a police organisation, you can sign up for free for our newsletter and to get alerts from us about any of the frauds we become aware of when we get them from the National Fraud Intelligence Bureau. We'll send those out, keep you abreast of what the current developments in cybersecurity are. In fact, we can even save you the hassle of filling the form in, folks, because at the end of the session, Sapphire and I can sign you up just using the email address you provided when you joined the webinar. If you don't want to hear from us, please let Sapphire or I know. You can either say thanks very much, but no thanks in the chat, or drop Sapphire and I an email at inquiries@ecrcentre.co.uk, and we won't do that for you. But like I said, this is a free service provided by the government, paid for by the police, so in effect, paid for by you. If you're not in East Anglia or Kent, don't worry, there is a Cyber Resilience Centre that covers you. My colleagues around the country appear in the various different colours here. So yeah, unless you're in Scotland, and Scotland do their own thing. So, but the Scottish Business Resilience Centre is also there to help you guys too. So finally, just a little bit more about what you get from us. Signposting to new tools, resources from the Policing and the National Cyber Security Centre. A monthly newsletter. We don't spam you folks with lots of stuff. The threat alerts when we get them. And there is on our site as well a little steps training program. It's a great way to introduce your staff to the basics of keeping themselves safe online. It's designed to be done in little 10-minute chunks on a weekly basis for about 13 weeks. It's the kind of thing you could do at the team meeting on a Friday over a cup of coffee. There's a bit more stuff as there. Finally, to help the police and the National Cyber Security Centre understand the threat we're all facing on a daily basis, if you get phishing messages, if they arrive at your personal email address, if they make it through your work phishing filter, you can just forward those to report@phishing.gov.uk. The reward for that is a nice little thank you message from the National Cyber Security Centre for saying thank you for forwarding this on. And you're informing them, the NCSC and us, about the things we need to be looking out for. You might be the first person to see this new fraud type, and that might be how we get the message out to everyone else. Suspicious text messages you can send to 7726. For those of you old enough to remember the alphanumeric part of your keyboard, it spells spam on your phone as if you were typing in an old text message. But yeah, forward those to 7726. You get a very similar thanks very much for sending this on message back from the NCSC. And there's a link there to the NCSC's Cyber Action Plan and a link there to us at the Eastern Cyber Resilience Centre. And I'm hoping with that, we've left enough time for questions. Unless, Mark, you want to come in just for this bit at the end?
No, I just want to say thank you both. That was it was really enlightening. Yeah, so I've got no questions in the chat, but if anyone has anything, and please by all means put your hand up. one of the things we are going to offer to everyone is free. Reach out afterwards if you would like us to run a dark web report on your domain. So Jake touched on it a little bit before. When there's been a breach, threat actors are able to get lists of usernames and passwords, and we can actually scan your domain or even your personal email if you like, and find out where that's what potentially has been exposed. And so we're willing to run that for you for free. Excellent. Well, if there are no questions, then thank you all very much for your time. And Jake, Jim, thank you very much. Oh, actually, we've got Ian with your hand up. Ian, I'm gonna unmute you. 1 second. Over to you, Ian. No, that didn't work. You might have to unmute yourself. Your things are loud. Okay, maybe not. So in the chat, video is saying password managers have been compromised before. What are your thoughts on this?
Jake, do you want to start with that, or do you want me to have a go?
Yeah, no, I'm happy to address that one. So yeah, they have, and we've seen a security incident in the past impacting, I think it was LastPass. I think that the key here with password managers is to ensure that you are applying what's called a strong master password, because every behind every password vault is that single password that you use to access your set of passwords. The longer, the more complicated that password is, the stronger the encryption. So you want to make sure that certainly for sure that you're not using the same password across all of the different systems that you use. Your strongest password should be unique and applied to your password manager. It's also important to look out for any news regarding the service that you use. So just do the occasional Google search about the password manager that you use, and just see if there's any security incidents out there that might be impacting that and onward your organization. But yeah, your master password should be should have a very good password, and I would suggest as well, if you are rolling out a password manager to your organization, that you opt for a business or enterprise plan, because that will allow centralized controls over all of your accounts. So if someone leaves the organization, they don't take the passwords with them. You can revoke their account and you can move the passwords into someone else's control. In addition to that, by opting for a business or enterprise offering with that centralized control, you can centrally control the settings that apply to those that use the password manager. For example, like a timeout period. So it might be that after 3 hours of inactive use, that the user is signed out of the password manager. That's a good control to implement. It might be that you want to enforce an extra layer of multi-factor authentication on the password manager. It might be that you want to prevent use of less secure MFA mechanisms such as SMS or phone call authentication. Although I'd be surprised if there was any password manager out there using, allowing use of those methods. But yeah, you get the point. Centralized visibility and control over your accounts is very important, and it's a great way of ensuring that that your passwords remain safe. I hope that sufficiently addresses your question.
Yeah, Jake, if I can just add a couple of bits to that. So somebody said, what are the best password apps? The National Cybersecurity Centre folks produce a technical document on what you should look for in a password manager, but obviously as a government agency, they won't recommend specific ones, but they will give you a list of things that you should look for in a password manager, so that you know whether or not your password manager meets that standard. The second thing is, yes, okay, a password manager, I know people might be uncomfortable with using it, but it's still a far safer solution, folks, than either reusing passwords or storing passwords in some sort of text or Excel file on your computer. But if you are a small enough organization, or maybe you're only a sole trader, in the end, if you don't use a password manager, the little black book is still on the NCSC's list of approved guidance. If you don't want to use a password manager and you're worried about reusing passwords, write them down instead.
Fantastic. And I've got another question here from Tim. Why, as a small company without large cash reserves, would a threat actor spend time trying to get money from us?
That is a great question, Tim. Thank you very much. The long and the short of it, folks, is they will monetize anything they can steal from you. So yes, you might not have cash that they can directly steal themselves, but they may be able to impersonate you and launch more successful scams and frauds on your suppliers or on your customers, or they may simply just harvest as much data as they can from your systems if they're able to get into it, and then just sell that data online. I have a horrendous example from a couple of years back of a charity that looked after vulnerable people in one of the counties in East Anglia. They didn't hold any cash reserves, but they did have a list of names and addresses of vulnerable people living in our communities, and they sold that information to organized drug dealers.
Wow. Wow.
It's one of the worst examples we've got, Mark. It's horrendous. Yeah, and did that result in people getting their houses cuckooed? So policing term, folks, for where basically drug dealers turn up, kick the vulnerable person out of their flat and turn it into a kind of drugs emporium for a few days. I'm sure it did.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, if they can monetize what they can steal in any way, folks, they will do.
That's true. I got another good question here. Is there any legal requirement for third parties to provide for third parties to ensure MFA is in place, particularly when there is sensitive data? The answer is no, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But maybe, Jim, you want to speak to that a little bit more?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously at the moment, folks, there is current cybersecurity legislation sitting with Parliament. So some of these things are changing very quickly in a dynamic field. My personal opinion is at the minute is that certainly from a government perspective and from GCHQ and the National Cybersecurity Centre's perspective, you know, they've tried the carrot to get people to do the right thing for quite a long time. And I'm getting a feeling from the national picture that, you know, there is now serious consideration about what is the stick they're going to introduce to move us all along on this journey, because expecting us all to do the right thing hasn't generated the progress that everyone at government level was hoping it would.
And further to that, one of the things you can do as an organization to ensure that your the companies you work with, your suppliers, are doing the essentials is make sure that they do have cyber essentials. If you work with A-tier companies or public bodies like the NHS, that is actually almost always a requirement.
Yeah, it's very, very important to know your suppliers and conduct due diligence on them, ideally before you do any work with them. Understand if they're ISO 27001 compliant, if they're taking your credit card details, are they PCI compliant? Just understanding that information, and something that we can do after this call, if you reach out to us or reach out to Jim and his colleagues, we can actually send you through an example, like a template due diligence questionnaire that you can use to send to some of your suppliers. It's worth documenting, it's worth revisiting every so often, 6 months to a year. But yeah, while we were talking earlier on about there being no legal requirement to enforce MFA, it is important to note that if you are a business that takes payments online, then you need to be PCI compliant, right? And part of that enforces that you have MFA enabled across all of your systems, amongst other things, like not hosting your website that's taking those payments on shared hosting platforms, etc. So yeah, while there may not be a legal requirement as such, it is MFA is very relevant, and it appears across many different frameworks, certifications, certainly in ISO 27001. Plus, you need to say that you've enforced MFA across all of your systems that support it when filling out the Cyber Essentials questionnaire as well.
Fantastic. Excellent. And it looks like all the questions for now, and it brings us nicely to 1 o'clock. So, Jake and Jim, thank you very much for today. It was incredibly informative.
Oh,
And,
thank you very
thank you
much.
all for coming.
Thank you for organising this.
Yeah, and thank you all for attending. Yeah, I hope that was all useful to you all. And yeah, please don't hesitate to reach out further to this. I'm more than happy to help with anything you need.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a good
Bye.
day all. Take care. Bye.